Let's play a game. Try to guess which of these people helped create Star Wars Andor.
I just never been interested in Star Wars ever.
My passion is theater. I'm not up and into...
I am not the biggest Star Wars fan.
The answer? All of them. But doesn't it seem weird that the people who don't care about Star Wars get to shape its story? Well, it's actually the reason behind the series being special, but more importantly, the reason behind it being good. Let me clarify.
It's human. It's incredibly truthful. And it just happens to be in a galaxy far, far away.
Just like the actor Adria Arjona, who plays Bix, explains the series, Andor could have been a story happening within any kind of sci-fi world. This is what makes it an outlier, an anomaly within its larger universe, because you can't make the same comparison to any other show Disney or Lucas for that matter has produced.
Our mandate was to make a new lane, try to bring in an audience that may be Star Wars reluctant or Star Wars resistant.
It's such a weird thing to say about something that's supposed to be Star Wars, that it was created for people who don't like the universe. But when you begin to truly think about the series, it actually makes perfect sense. And to understand what I mean, we have to go back to a quite well-known interview with George Lucas and Charlie Rose.
They looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans.
The key point here is how George describes Bob Iger and Disney's fear-based approach to the sequel trilogy. They had already set expectations that were designed around what they thought would work before the story was written, which we all know is a big no-no in filmmaking. However, the real takeaway to my argument is how it all contrasts sharply with Andor's showrunner Tony Gilroy's process, and even his writing/directing contribution to Rogue One.
I don't think Rogue really is a Star Wars movie in many ways. To me, it's a Battle of Britain movie.
In simple terms, the show stands out as different because it was designed that way. It's not anti-Star Wars per se, rather anti the way Disney usually writes its Star Wars stories. This discrepancy is likely why it received mixed reactions. It scared people because a Star Wars show had never been paced or written like this. Therefore, it was fascinating to see how it evolved week by week. The discussions around the episodes, how critics praised it, how people called it slow, and how others described it as a Star Wars for grown-ups.
Like Star Wars for grown-ups.
However, like I said, its unique approach also chased away many fans, so it never reached the same amount of people as the more well-known projects like The Mandalorian or Kenobi. This also added to the anomaly that was Andor, or maybe a more right term could be an underdog, because the show was amazing, and those that liked it basically couldn't stop talking about the show. Yet somehow it didn't get as much attention as I and many more thought it deserved.
It didn't seem like there was a lot of heat on Andor, that this massive show was being made in Pinewood, but that people had somehow forgotten about it.
Tony Gilroy has in a recent interview said that the reason behind season 2 being made is the overwhelmingly positive fan reactions, which illustrates that there is a place for great stories that doesn't involve all the familiar elements of the Force, Jedi, and lightsabers. He is even praising Disney for giving the story room to grow into its own thing.
It's still a huge gamble, and they just backed our play all the way through in the most extraordinary way.
But don't get me wrong, Disney isn't the ones that should get the most attention here. It's definitely the team that created the show, and especially Tony Gilroy.
If Tony Gilroy is writing anything, I'm happy to be at that party.
It was very well written. It was Tony Gilroy who wrote it.
Has written an inspiring series.
Socio-political drama that's also a thriller and a love story and also all this stuff, and also Star Wars.
He seems to be a smart, genuine, and fantastic guy, but most importantly in this context, a phenomenal writer. There is no doubt that he deserves all the love he gets, and the more interviews you watch of the actors and people connected to the series, the the more you realize that Andor never would have been made without him. The characters, the dialogue, and the seemingly perfect story is all to do with him. But what is the secret behind the brilliance? It's quite simple actually. He is a humble storyteller, a writer that happens to be placed within the world of Star Wars. He is not a Star Wars fan trying to tell a story, which seems to be the case with almost everything else Disney produces. It's both tragic and funny listening to Tony Gilroy talk sometimes, because of the way he offends and literally destroys other shows without him even realizing it.
I don't see the purpose of how you would write a character with an agenda. You see other shows where people had trouble sticking the landing. It's always weird when you see a character and their IQ goes up and down based on what the writer wants them to do. Right.
I think it's kind of silly to say that Star Wars can't evolve, or that every story needs to follow the same formula. In retrospect, did anything George Lucas make ever feel exactly the same as what came before? The original trilogy is very different from the prequels, and the Clone Wars experimented with all kinds of genres and music. Just like Tony Gilroy's writing process, the contrast between Disney's and George's way of viewing storytelling is enormous. But to be fair, the result of George's original and very ambitious philosophy resulted in a lot of fan hate. Case in point, the prequel trilogy. That's why Andor surprised me, because it feels like they finally learned something, and you can see that the people working on it are excited for the fans to finally watch it. Tony Gilroy seems immensely proud of the work everyone has done, calling it his most important show ever. And remember, this is a successful filmmaker that has helped create the Jason Bourne movies, Nightcrawler, previously mentioned Rogue One, Michael Clayton, and more.
I want you to live inside all of these people, and that's what I care about.
When telling a story, it's important to start with a blank slate. Not worrying about pleasing fans or sticking to a set principles is what makes a storyteller confident and creative. However, that doesn't mean ignoring what came before or breaking the rules of Star Wars. Instead, it's about using them to your advantage. Just look at Andor's world building, with different planets and people, in ways that would be very hard to do outside of such an established world. Ultimately, the goal isn't to comment on existing stories or reshape them. It's simply to tell a great adventure that happens to take place in a galaxy far, far away. And that's what Andor is to me. A one-of-a-kind, brilliant story about revolution and everything you have to sacrifice for it. Here you can watch another video about the most underrated scene in the entire series. Thank you so much for sticking until the end, and I wish you a fantastic day.